Yo, what up everyone, it's Kotek. Since I just put out that sample pack on Splice, I think today might be a good time to talk about how I like to sometimes use samples to inspire new creative ideas. Alright, let's check it out. Alright, check this out. This is a little technique I like to use that utilizes chaos and randomization to sort of generate new ideas. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab a sampler. Once you got that loaded up, I'm going to head over to my pack and just grab any random sample. It doesn't matter, but we're going to drag a whole bunch of them into the sampler at once. So now that I've got these all loaded, the first thing I'm going to do is go over to the velocity control and right click here and click distribute ranges equally. Next, I'm going to navigate to the filter global section and make sure that the velocity to volume sensitivity is set all the way to 0 for all the samples. I'm also going to go back to the sample tab and then make sure that the scale is set to 0 for all the samples. This will make sure that no matter what note I press, every single sample still plays at its original pitch. Once I'm done that, I will load up a velocity MIDI effect. And by setting the out high and the out low to 64, I can then set the random knob all the way to 64 and it will give me a true randomized value from 0 all the way to 127. Now, it doesn't matter what note I press, it's going to re-trigger a different sample every single time I play because of this velocity setting here. Once I've got the velocity settings dialed in, then I'm just going to add a little bit of OTT and maybe some glue compression to the end in order to make sure that all the samples play at a similar volume. So we'll dial that in a little bit, not too much, but just enough to make sure that we're hearing everything. Now I'm just going to play the same note over and over again on the keyboard and check out what happens. Crazy. Now we've basically created an instrument that generates chaos using all the samples we dropped into it, but we're going to go one step farther. So I've got a drum rack here with a couple of drums on it, and what I want is to make it so that every time I play the kick and the snare drum, it triggers a random sample from this instrument. So the way we're going to do that is first by grouping this drum rack. After we've done that, we're going to create another chain, and I'm just going to drop a velocity effect onto that chain in order to give us an easier way to find this in the drop-down menu later, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So first, I'm going to open up the key setting here, and I'm going to play this drum rack real quick. So I see here that my kick and my snare are on C1 and D1. So if I hold C1 and double click on this, it'll set that so that this chain only sends MIDI signals when I play C1. But I also want to include the snare, so I'll drag that out a little bit. As long as it's not over top of where my hi-hats are, then we're good. So next, I'm going to go to our chaos instrument and we're going to set the input to be our drum rack. And then we're going to use the second drop-down menu to pull the MIDI information from our second chain in the drum rack. Now, anytime I play the kick or the snare, as long as I have this set to in, it will also send signal to this instrument and make it so that I have a playable instrument that generates random sounds for me. Check it out. Sweet.